Yo, what's up everybody, Squillo here, and today we are doing our second character guide for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So today we're going to talk about our good old boy Link. So Link, yo, he's just really good and solid, and if you played the first Hyrule Warriors, it was the same way. Honestly, he was like one of the best characters, if not the best character in Hyrule Warriors, and a lot of that was just because each of his moves are just straight to the point effective. They do something that you need them to do in a warrior style game, and that's how it is in this game as well. Link's moveset is extremely effective, but what's cool about him in this game is he actually has a lot of little technical sides to him despite the overall simplicity and effectiveness of his moveset. So let's get in here. First, let's talk about his different moves. So first we have the Y string. Pretty standard. I would say his Y string is something you're not going to use as much as, say, compared to Impa, but it works. But now let's get into his charge attacks. So first we have YX. So YX is a launcher that's going to take you airborne, and you have a number of things you can do after this. You can just go into his weak strikes, his Y strikes in the air. You can do the heavy strike, you can go straight into that or chain that after the weak strikes. And then something more specific is you can go into Paraglide. So Paraglider is going to give you some mobility, like if you see an incoming attack you can sort of Paraglider out of the way. But something I talked about earlier, like something I had put up in a video, is that you can Paraglider cancel to get to your normal attacks faster. So normally when you do YX and then you go airborne, there's a little delay before you can actually go into the weak strikes. But if you Paraglider cancel and then go into your weak strikes, you can do it pretty much instantly. Like, you're definitely doing it faster as compared to trying to do it the natural way. So canceling into Paraglider is something really effective, not just for the Paraglider itself, but for your offense, as it allows you to start attacking much quicker than if you wait until you get to the max height that it allows you to attack. So that's definitely one of the cool elements of that. You can even just straight up get back down to the ground pretty quickly after the launcher. So there's a lot of potential to that, and it's really cool because that Paraglider cancel adds a lot of dimension to how you can use this one single attack. Next up we have YYX. So he rides the shield. You can control it a little bit. You can sort of drift to the sides. So this it's very nice. It's a mobile option. It's pretty fast. It's pretty safe. You can dash out of it effectively. Like, it's not one of his strongest options as like a go-to option, but it's a safe way to initiate offense. And the hold move after it, when you hold the X. So if you hold X after this, you can go into a sort of flurry that can hit all the enemies that you rounded up during riding. So I would say that part of the move is definitely more ideal for actually dealing damage than the shield ride part of it itself. Next up we have YYYX, and I would say this is probably one of his best moves he has access to in this demo. So what's going to happen here is first you just get a standard sword spin, which works as a good crowd control option, decent damage. But the best part about it is its follow-up. So when you hold X, you get this follow-up, which is like a forward spinning slash, which will end in the air. And similar to like YX, when you get airborne during this, you can go into a variety of air options. So you can go into your standard attacks, heavy attacks, and of course you can do the Paraglider cancel. And you can even do that a little bit earlier because this move goes airborne before the finishing hit. So you can actually do it just a little bit earlier. Like the second you go airborne, which is pretty early into the string now that I noticed. I don't think I noticed how early you go airborne, but you go airborne pretty soon into that string. So you have all those same options when you go airborne. Next up we have Y times 4 into X. So this is really nice. It's an upward spinning slash. I would say like this is one of his best like concentrated attacks if you stand in the middle of a mob and you just use this, it's going to kind of vacuum all of the enemies into you. Let me try to show it out here, which makes it super effective for just like getting in the middle of a stronghold or something. Yeah, so if I use it right here, he rounds up all the enemies, it kind of launches them in the air, and then I'm in his hold move. The hold move afterwards is going to be a slash into another raising sort of like energy pillar of light. So whenever you use this, let me use the whole move together. See, he rounds up all the enemies. So that's like a really, really strong concentrated crowd control option. I would say it's probably his best option damage-wise. And something interesting about the follow-up is that it can actually expose the weak point gauge before the enemy. It can expose the weak point gauge without the enemy having to expose it normally. So let me try to show this. Let me wait until it goes away. Let me hit him with this. So as you can see right there, that pillar of light part of the move will actually force the weak point gauge out of the boss enemies. It goes away super fast, so this is only really effective if you get into one of the situations where you just need to chip like a little bit of it away to expose it. But it's a nice perk nonetheless, and even just the act of exposing the weak point will stagger the enemy and interrupt whatever action they're doing. So it's just really strong as a guaranteed stagger, and not even just necessarily trying to expose the weak point gauge, but that's two nice perks of it. Okay, so next up we have X. Let me go back out here. We got a lot of chaos going out over there. Alright, so X, this is just standard swordsman. So I would say this is not as strong as it was in the first Hyrule Warriors, but it works. And of course you can hold it and charge it. And of course you can cancel out of this at pretty much any point, which is the case for most of his attacks. He doesn't really have an attack that he's locked into the same way that Impa does. So all of his moves are pretty effective, pretty to the point. I feel like YYYX is my favorite. It's what I use the most because you can cover so much ground. So like, let's say you go YYYX and then you Paraglider Cancel into normals. Like, the amount of ground you cover there with active hitboxes is super strong, and I'll show that against actual enemies. But that's like one of my favorite sequences to use to just clear mobs and deal damage in general. Next up, let's talk about his R2 unique action. So his R2 unique action is his bow, which shoots like a bow flurry. Now this move is not particularly amazing in general, but whenever you shoot boss type enemies, certain ones in the head, it can expose their weak point. So let me show this. I'm gonna shoot. You can actually do this in the air too. So you can see it when I shoot the moblin in the head, I actually force him to fall over and expose his weak point. So that's probably one of the strongest effects of it. I feel like it just doesn't do enough. I mean, you can shoot these barrels as well, which is pretty effective, but in general I just don't think it's like a super strong attack that you're going to use in too many scenarios. Let me try to see if we can get a look at how much damage it deals here. Yeah, so it's not even necessarily strong enough to take out a weak mob, especially because it starts to juggle them in the air, which makes it hard for the arrows to follow up. But you can use it as a ranged option to, you know, hit the barrels, to expose weak points on bosses and stuff like that. So it has utility of being a ranged attack. Next up, we got the Sheikah Rune, Sheikah Slate abilities. So first, we got the Cryo ability. Pretty straight to the point. It puts out the ice block, and if you notice when he's putting it out, it puts you into an airborne state. So it actually acts as like a jump action, and you can go into all of your airborne options we've talked about up to this point after doing that, which is probably one of the best perks of it. You can just fit it into your moveset pretty seamlessly. Like, I can use it right here, just however you want to fit it in, as a sort of extra action to get airborne or something. Next up, we have Bomb. So Bomb, pretty similar to the arrows, you're going to get like a flurry of bomb tosses, and these are really effective. I would say only for breaking weak points, unfortunately. because I feel like it just lasts a bit too long and it doesn't really have any noteworthy properties. Like say compared to Impa puts it out and she's able to move pretty actively after she puts it out, but Link is just hard locked into a very long animation of throwing bombs. And I guess the damage on them actually isn't too bad. That actually took out a mob, so it does work. It works as like a mob option, I guess. I actually want to try this again. I want to get like a nice meaty mob here and see. Alright, so that was kind of cheating there because I got the barrel along with all that. But I guess it can work as a like a decent range crowd control option, and you have invincibility during this, which is worth noting. So it's pretty safe. Like right there, it wasn't able to kill those guys. Like it left them with just a little bit of health. But you know, maybe in the full game we'll get certain scenarios where using a safe ranged initiative like that will be really helpful before going into a fight. I feel like in this demo we're not really put in situations where you need to be thinking like that. Alright, next up we have Stasis. So Stasis, pretty straightforward. You freeze the enemies and you can just sort of wail on them, and you can see when you hit them it actually shows the arrow, which is like where they're gonna launch after the stasis wears off, which is obviously very similar to how it was in Breath of the Wild. But in context of a Warriors game like this opens up crowd control potential. So let me try to show this. So you can sort of propel the enemies and they'll knock into other enemies. Damage isn't too great from the knock effect, but this is actually something we've sort of seen in other Warriors games before, where attacks have properties to knock enemies into other enemies. But yeah, that's sort of like an extra element to it. So whenever you do use the stasis, you can consider which direction you're hitting them so that you can get some collateral damage off of hitting other mobs. Alright, so next up we have Magnesium. Let's see if we can actually use this. I don't think I really have any metallic or metal type stuff around here, so I don't think I'm gonna. Alright, I picked up a random weapon. Yeah, so basically he just grabs stuff and he holds it in front of him and it becomes just a big active hitbox, which at the end of it, when it wears off, depending on what you have held, like if you have the big blocks, they don't really fly as much, but basically whatever you have held just sort of explodes or flies forward or something like that. It works as like mostly just like a big crowd control tool, I feel. The damage on it can be okay. I would say it's actually one of his better Sheikah Slate abilities to use just for like general play. A lot of the other ones are a lot more situational, I feel, but this one can fit pretty seamlessly into general play, assuming you have something around that you can pick up. So you can always try to fit that in to get some extra crowd control going on. But Link himself already has amazing crowd control in his base kit, so it's kind of like it doesn't add a lot to his kit already, since he already just has amazing crowd control. So let me kind of show you an example of what I was talking about with the string that I like with him. So you see right there, I was able to cover a lot of ground, be very mobile. I took out a lot of enemies. It's just such a strong option. But also the Y times 4 into X is so strong too. They're both really strong, and it's hard to really say which one's better. I mean, they both have strengths over one another depending on the situation. But between those two moves, like, you get a lot of value out of Link's kit and what he can do. Anyways, I think that's pretty much it, right? Let me show off his Muso special attack real quick. His Muso special, another spin attack, you know, to no surprise. It gets the job done. That's really all you can say about it. It's just it's a spin attack. It doesn't have any like dramatically noteworthy qualities, but it does work, so just use it. Stand like in the middle of a room, like a stronghold, and you can pretty much clear a stronghold with effective placement of it. That's like my favorite place to use specials in general, which I talked about with Impa, but I feel like special attacks and strongholds are so strong. Like you can usually force the boss out almost instantly if you place a special attack properly where there's like a lot of mobs lined up. Anyways, that's it for this. Thank you for watching, everybody. Peace.